Hello and welcome to Beyond Top 10 Tennis. My name is Dr. Ashley Morgan-Berge and I'm your host. If you're not familiar with my work, would like to learn more about it, head on over to AIMA International, the first tennis lab of its kind worldwide that is centered on delivering top 10 tennis rankings and is 100% backed by science. This season, we're embarking on something new, something fresh, what I've been holding back. Changeover segments. We'll deliver how to beat the best players in the world or how the best players in the world are winning with top 10 to Grand Slam differences. If you want more, that's where my 14 books come into play. So be sure to dive into them and become familiar with AIMA International and the 195 now plus previous episodes. And look, it's a new frontier and I'm no longer holding back. So buckle in and enjoy the ride. Welcome to another edition of Beyond Top 10 Tennis. For those of you who have been with us for some time now, thank you so much. We would not be here without you. For those that are new, welcome. I would encourage you as always to track back to those early episodes, whether it's those first 50 that were really jam-packed with earlier chapters of, I'll say, some of my first releases, and then how we progress by essentially applying the science, the data, etc., week in, week out, as far as the rankings are concerned, predictive analytics are concerned, the 7 keys that then evolved to the 8 keys are concerned, through essentially the last 2.5, I'll say, calendar years or seasons on tour, which have been really exciting. We've managed to publish, or I've managed to author, I think, 3 books over the span of Beyond Top 10 Tennis essentially being brought to life, which is a lot actually when I come to think of it. I hadn't really thought of it from that perspective before, and I guess you can say a half with a big I'll say the second half of last season I started penning my next fictional manuscript, which only wrapped up roughly, I'm going to say about 5-6 weeks ago, but it's still been very jam-packed across that time span. But I did promise you all, so this is obviously for those who have tuned into those episodes, that I would let you know when that book was going to become available, even though it's not one of the typical non-fiction releases. With Beyond Top 10 Tennis wrapping up in the coming weeks, you'll have to stay tuned on AIMA International, and all updates, etc., will be there, as well as the newsletter, blog, etc. So that's where that will be when the time comes. So look, for those of you who are new, can you believe, well, new, old, irrespective where you're at on your listening journey with Beyond Top 10 Tennis, today's episode is 197. Oh my goodness. Beyond Top 10 Tennis is a few weeks shy of turning 3. So wow, oh my goodness. And I believe from the data that I've been able to, I'll say, collect, review, Beyond Top 10 Tennis actually is in, I think it's the 0.01% of podcasts worldwide, with not just episodes, quality, users, feedback, etc., but the longevity and consistency, which I think is really cool, that I've been able to stick with you week in, week out for we're almost at that 3-year mark, and it has been a lot of work but a lot of fun. So if you are new, previous episode I did share the decision that was made that we were going to wrap Beyond Top 10 Tennis up for now when we come to episode 200, with new projects on the horizon, and I'm really looking forward to penning that next book that will be all about the data, and especially when we did introduce changeover segments the beginning of this season, how to beat the best players in the world and how the best players in the world are winning. That's essentially the foundation, or the bedrock, if you like, of all of my text. how to get you towards that top 10 tennis ranking, whether you are 10 years of age, 15 years of age, 22 years of age, and you want to become a barrier breaker, knocking on the threshold of the top 10. I really should say want to, not the slang one. My apologies. But that's really important. So irrespective of what age you are at, those texts exist. So there's 13 fictional books, and there's 13 non-fiction books, one fiction book there. Going to add to that to make that 2 in the coming year, with the full manuscript. Now, I'll say it's looking to find its roots. So those 13 texts that are there, whether it's the last season's release of My Tennis Workbook, the 24 release of My Tennis Black Book, they're absolutely pivotal and fundamental, really like a journal and a guide in one. And also, if you like, it holds your hand, guides you through those initial episodes of Beyond Top 10 Tennis with key podcast episodes to listen to week in, week out as well. But also what you should be writing down, how your goals really should be shaped, how your training should be shaped, and what you can learn from those earlier texts, what chapter you should be reading from at any given week across the entire collection. And I'm really proud of My Tennis Black Book, sharing with you where to start, because it really will allow you to find your footing. Find your feet amongst essentially 13 texts, 11 if we're excluding the workbook and black book, where to begin, what you can learn, etc. And then how you can essentially work your way through the entirety of the collection. And what's important here is, irrespective if you are a top 10 player right now, there are still key facets of play you can learn from those initial books. If you are that 12-year-old uncertain about where to start, how to develop your game, you start at the very beginning, and yes, it gets more technical, but as you get older, as your game develops, so does your knowledge of the game, so does your level of education, etc. So essentially it holds your hand in that respect as well. If you look at it like a learning curve, that takes you from the initial inception onwards. And there's a section on AIMA International that actually shares with you your point of inception, where you should be at, etc. So even though today's episode, there isn't, say, a deep dive into how the best players in the world are winning, etc. This is the snippet really to guide you of where you should be at, etc. But also, if you like, the really hard decision I've had to make to, I'm going to say, close off the chapter of Beyond Top 10 Tennis, but I say that really loosely because my heart's still there, and I do think that there is room to grow beyond top 10 tennis in the future, but with one too many competing priorities at this stage. I'm really looking forward to sharing the results of that next longitudinal analysis. So remember, I'm responsible for the longest study of its kind worldwide in the history of tennis, and we've essentially, or I've written multiple texts in the last few years, waiting for that data essentially to collate. So I'm looking forward to setting that time aside, having a big deep dive into it, so then I can really share with you what those new findings are, how those the science, if you like, applies to your game, how the tennis landscape has been evolving, the key patterns, etc. to look for, how you can apply that to your own game. And there's a lot around there, from technical metrics, the development phase. It's a complete ecosystem, if you like. AIM International being the first tennis lab of its kind that is responsible for housing the infrastructure, if you like, of a complete player's game, whether it's your biomechanics, so looking at that technical applications, etc., that built the games of Federer, Nadal, Djokovic, Serena, etc. So the top 4 leading players of our time as far as Grand Slams are concerned how their roots essentially are and where the science is. It interchanges between all 4 players, and then the texts that have subsequently been released, and how you can apply that then to your game. So those respective players, and there's many more players to that list, hundreds, how they've informed the state of the art, if you like, blueprint for what's required for the next generation to level up. And we're seeing that in the likes of not just Alcaraz and Sinner, Swiatek, Sabalenka, Gov, Andreeva, etc. Coming through, but also how our predictive analytics are so strong, how we track these players prior to winning a Grand Slam, prior to entering the top 10, and how I'm able to flag them to say, now, this is a player that is, yes, they're on the correct curve, ascending towards the top 10 if they follow the long game, the pathway. So they're also available to access on AIMA International. All right, today's episode, it's not going to be as I'll say vast, deep as previous episodes, because we've got a couple of the smaller tier events that have happened over the last fortnight. WTA Tour, Copa Charleston, Austria, that just wrapped up last week. So we're doing it over the span of 2 weeks, which means we do have rankings to go over for the last fortnight. Then on the ATP Tour, Houston, Morocco, Bucharest, and Monte Carlo. That's the big one there that we'll focus on as well. But you'll have to bear with me, because I want to have a look at the ranking of the past 2 weeks. Why I decided to skip last week to make sure this week was, I guess, a fortnight, is because we're narrowing down those remaining episodes, 3 more after today's, so we do close off on our 3-year anniversary. I like the sound of that, coming full circle across those 3 years, hitting that 200 mark. It's a nice, clean and intentional, I'll say, pause. I really shouldn't say close, purely because I do feel like there's room for beyond top 10 tenors in the future, but the time has come to put a bit of a pause or halt on that, so I can allow a bit more time for writing and really help the next generation of play level up to what we're seeing on the courts. Well, as we speak, week in, week out, and the data really is calling me to write that. But to keep pace, etc., I really would encourage each and every one of you to begin, if you haven't already, making your way through the collection, book 1 through to book 13 inclusive. Book 13, however, is my tennis workbook. So it's something you should have on your bedside table or in your tennis bag you're writing in, day out. And it really is your go-to, is your guide, and that was the intention also behind that. All right, kicking off a WTA Tour first, followed by the ATP Tour. We're going to begin with Copa, and it is a 250 event. I'll say the beginning of the clay court season here. I do believe after last week we wrapped up the hard court season, so Miami, so keep that fresh. So we are officially now clay court season, so really it marks the second quarter of the season. Oh my goodness, I can't believe how much time has flown. All right, Bouzkova is the number 1 seed here, and the second seed is Bouzkova, just to put that into perspective, being a 250 event. All right, let's go through this. Bouzkova over Sanchez, 0-2. We've got Van der Winkel over Kostolos. That's a 6-3, 2-6, 6-3. Papa Michael over Ticona, 3-1. Look, as always, I apologize for my mispronunciation. I'm 100% positive there's already a number of names that I have skewed. It is not intentional, so I do apologize. Look, Semastaja over Seidel. Now, that's an upset. Seidel being the 5th seed, 2-2. Osorio, 3rd seed, over over Dolhide, 6-7, 2-1. Hortensi over Brillo, that's a 1-4. Riera over Janovic, 7-6, 6-1. Blinkova 6-seed over Montgomery, 2-3. Udvari over Torres Monchiva, 6-1, 1-6, 6-love. Pareja over Mandalik, 3-3. Kawa over Monet, 1-0. Maria over Middlora Arias, 2-1. Upset here. I will do my best to pronounce this. We've got Marastani Giulietta di Reales over Jones, 7-seed, 1-1. Arango over Carl, 1-6, 6-love. 6-2, 6-love. I'll say that again, 1-6, 6-2, 6-love. Lepchenko over Karavanchiva, 3-6, 6-3, 6-2. Bozes Maniero over Rakamanja Waranjaha, 6-2, 6-2. Oh my goodness, I really did try. Again, if I mispronounced your name, I do apologize. All right, round of 16. Bouzkova over Van Winkle, 6-4. Van Winkle then did have to retire. Another, we've seen a lot of retirement so far this season, which is, look, it's disheartening. And we've seen this at all levels, whether you're ranked outside the top 50 or inside the top 50. Goes to show the pressure on a player's body, if not handled, I will say in alignment with the 7 keys, now 8 keys. That's something to really have a deep dive in. I penned a lot about that in the Black Book, but also previous works as well. And we have shared a lot of that on Beyond Top 10 Tennis, I'll say over the years. It's really important, and that's why I encourage you, if you haven't already, to begin that dive through, whether it's episode 1 through to today's episode, because there's a lot to learn there that players do not have to suffer as much as they have been. All right, Semastaja over Paravankale, 6-1, 1-6, 6-2. Ostensi's upset the 3rd seed Osorio, 7-6, 7-6. Look, those tie breaks were 4 and 5, really close. Riera's upset the 6th seed Blinkova, love 6, 6-2, 6-1. Udavari 8th seed over Parija, 6-love, 2-6, 6-1. Carl was upset Maria, 4th seed, 3-3. Arango over Marastani Giulietta di Reales, 5-2. Lepchenko's upset Bozes Miniero, the 2nd seed, 6-love, 2-6, 7-5. Wow, a lot of upsets there. But on to the quarters, we've still got the number 1 seed in action and the 8th seed in action. Here we go. Bouzkova over Samastaja, 6-1, 7-5. Ostensi over Riera, 6-7, 6-3, 6-2. Udavari over Kawa, 7-6, 6-1. Arango over Lepchenko, 4-3. So semi-finals, we've still got the 2 seeds in action. Bouzkova over Ostensi, 7-6, 6-2. Udavari over Arango, 6-7, 6-3, 7-6. Look, those tie breaks for perspective, that was 6-8 and 3rd set, 7-5. Very close, which means the 2 seeds left in actions from the quarters have made it all the way through to the finals. That's what we want to see and like to see. 1st seed and 8th seed Bouzkova, Udavari respectively, and it was tight. 6-7, and that was 7-9. Then 6-2, 6-2 to Bouzkova. Congratulations to Bouzkova. And again, if you've listened to, I'll say the last half a dozen plus episodes, Bouzkova's been on the radar. Even though, look, she's a little bit, I'll say, older, so plus 25. I think she's 27, 28 years of age. Still incredibly young. But we're seeing a really good peak the last 6 to 12 months, which I'm really liking. And I have flagged Bouzkova as a player on the radar to do really good things with how she has been playing. So this is a really good metric for Bouzkova and obviously respectively for her game. All right, now we're going to move on to Charleston. It is a 500. It's a big one, and I do believe Pegula is the defending champion. She is the number 1 seed here. It's a big draw, round of 64, and 2nd seed for perspective is, 2nd seed had to withdraw. I'm not too sure actually what player did withdraw, but Gorgozi hit the jackpot there. With a bye 1st round. That's interesting. So that will be reflected in the rankings. Really interesting. We'll go through the seeds just so you can have a look at or see the players that are in action. But that does suggest to me if Pegula, my apologies, was the number one seed, we're not essentially looking at, say, Sabalenka, Rybakina, Gauff, or Swiatek being in action, but potentially it was the likes of, say, an Anisimova, Svitolina, Paolini, and Bocco, Andreeva, etc., rounding out the top 10, potentially going off the rankings of that week, but I'm not too sure. There wasn't something that I read, I will say, to be clear, of who did withdraw. All right, I will read through the buys just to keep the draw nice and clear. Pegula, starting it off with a buy first round. We've got Putintseva over Sun, 7.662. Noteworthy, Sun was around 50 in the world when she peaked, when she cracked onto the scene, I'll say, the last 2 seasons. I think she's recently dipped outside the top 100. Putintseva was top 30. She's recently, I'll say she's regressed quite a bit the last 12 months, but she's finding her footing again with some reasonable results. So that's a good one there for Putintseva. All right, Yuan over Sheriff, 2-6, 7-6, 7-6. Those tiebreaks were 4 and 5 respectively. Cocchiaretto, how exciting for her, 14th seed to be seeded, but she does have a bye. Fernandez with a bye as well. Kudermetova over Olyankova, 3-6, 7-6, 6-4. Volnets over Lies. I'm going to call that one an upset. 5-7, 6-2, 6-love. Lies hasn't been, I'll say, playing at the level she was last season so far in respect to this season. Schneider with a bye, Jovic with a bye. Parks over Stoyana, 2-6, 6-4, 6-1. Andreescu over Galfi. Good win for Andreescu. I think she did have to come through qualifying for this. 1-6, 6-4, 6-1. Kennan with a bye, Sakari with a bye. Great to see Sakari seeded again. Really big regression the last 18 months. And oh my goodness, has she been clawing her way back. And you look, it was only a few weeks ago she got that win over Swiatek. So I think she is, I'll say, on the road to potentially top 20 come the second half of this season. Badosa over Day, 4 and 3. Good win for Badosa there. Tomova over Brady, 4 and 3. Kalinskaya back as a seeded player again. She's with a bye. Keys with a bye. Vekic, good win over Tomljanovic, especially considering Vekic's almost regression outside the top 100. I think this time last year she was inside the top 20. Score there was 3-6, 6-1, 6-4. Bonda over Vidmanova, 5 and 5. Frech with a bye. Bajek with a bye. Oraho over Sierra, 7-5-3 over Sierra. Unfortunately had to retire in the second. Yastremska over Zakharova, 5 and 2. Benchik with a bye. Stearns with a bye. Kruger over Bignali, 6-4, 1-6, 6-3. Kessler over Kaliva, 4-6, 6-3. 6-3 to Jen with a bye, Baptist with a bye. Zarazua over Stevens. Now I do believe Sloane Stevens had to qualify here, and look, it's great to just see her back. I love it. But look, Zarazua with the win there, 6-2, 6-love. Stadbatsiva over Zhang, 6-3, 6-love, and Gozet with the bye. All right. Second round, so we will see the seeded players now in action. Pegula over Putintseva, but it was tight, 4-6, 6-4, 7-5. Look, well done to Putintseva for pushing Pegula that far, but well done to Pegula. Cocchiaretto over Yuan, 6-love, 7-5. Cocchiaretto really has been making inroads this season. Fernandez over Kudermetova, 2 and 1. Schneider over Volnets, 5 and 5. Jovic over Parks, 3 and 2. Kennan, good win over Andreescu, 4 and 4. Badosa, great win over Sakari there, 3 and 4. Just goes to show, look, when Badosa's healthy and she's fit, look, she's still playing like, I'll say a top 20 player, not quite a top 10, but still top 20 level. Kalinskaya over Tomova, 2 and 4. Keys over Vekic, good win there, 2 and 3. Bondar's upset Frech, 7-5, 6-3. Bejek over Oraho, 1 and 1. You got Benchik over Yastremska, 6-2, 6-7, 6-3. That was tight. Stearns over Kruger, 7-6, 7-5. Kessler's upset Jen, 2 and 1. Zarazua's upset Baptiste, 3-6, 6-3, 6-4. And Stadbatsiva's got the win over Gorgodze, 3-6, 6-1, 2. And she's in that prime position where that number 2 seed would have been. All right, round of 16 now. Bottom half of the draw is wide open. We've got Pegula with a win over Cocchiaretto, but it was tight. Look at this. 1-6, 6-1, 7-6, 7-1 for that tie break. Pegula, that is a very tight there. All right, Schneider over Fernandez. 6-3, 6-love. That's a very good win for Schneider. Jovic over Kenin, 7-5, 7-5. Good win for Jovic. Kalinskaya over Bedosa, 4-2. Keys over Bonda, 2-5. Benchik over Berge, 7-6, 6-2. Kessler's upset Stern, 6-love, 3-6, 6-4. And Stadobot-Seva's got the win over Zarazua, 6-1, 6-love. That's a great win for Stadobot-Seva. All right, as far as the quarterfinals then are concerned, we still have, I'll say, 6 seeds in action. Not too bad considering the bottom draw was without a seed. So technically that's actually 7 of a potential 8, even though it's 6 of a potential 8. That's good. That's what we want to see. And all top 8. Well, no, we've got okay. Pegula over Schneider, 3-6, 6-3, 6-2. Jovic over Kalinskaya, 3-4. Good win there for Jovic. She really has been correlating with her ranking this season. Big rise up the rankings, but she's been able to hold her own, similar to what we've been seeing this season with Morocco. All right, Keys over Benchik. This is a good win for Keys, 4-6, 6-3, 6-2. And Stadobot-Seva with the win over Kessler, 4-4. This is really going to shift Stadobot-Seva with the rankings, making the semis of a 500 event. Wow. All right, so the semifinals, we do have 3 of potential 4 seeds in action. Pegula, number 1 seed over Jovic, the 4th seed, 6-4, 5-7, 6-3. Look, I need to hand it to Jovic for pushing Pegula to 3, even though she's had all 3 set matches so far. But what a great, I think, outcome for Jovic. But again, well done for Pegula. Really clutch tennis there. Stadobot-Seva, wow, has upset Keys, 6-1, 6-4. I think officially Stadobot-Seva is on the radar with how well she's been playing this season, making the semis of a 500 event, onto the final. That's huge news for her. But look at this. In the final, Pegula over Stadobot-Seva. Look, I think it's absolutely Stadobot-Seva's first final at the 500 level. Pegula with the win, 2-2. I believe she's either defended her title. I think that is the case, but well done to Stadobot-Seva. That is really exciting to see. Wow. All right, so that is the results there with Pegula with the win. What I'm going to do now, before we head on over to Linz, so the Austria results of the past week, let's have a look at the rankings that will reflect Charleston and the Columbia results. All right, so we'll do this in 2 batches. All right, at 100, we've got Jones there. I'm going to be relatively quick, and I'll pick out some key players for perspective because I know what's next. Potapova, she's back 3 at 97 in the world. So keep that in mind, and we'll get back to that, and I'll say in about 10-15 minutes. Parks is up 4 to 93. Townsend's back 2 to 92. Belenkova's up 9 to 90. Arango up 20 places to 86 in the world. That is a really nice jump there. Osorio's back 27 to 81 in the world. Sierra, a 13-point regression to 78. Again, looking for the bigger movers, Udvari, she's up 21 to 71 in the world. Kazakina, former top 10, she's back 3 to 70 in the world. Haven't really seen her in action this season, not too much the last few weeks. Kenin, 19-point regression to 66 in the world. That's a bit of a hit there. Bondar's up 5 to 63. Jackie Mo's up 4 to 59. Here we go. Stadobot-Seva, a 36-point progression to 53 in the world. That's very cool, very exciting there. That does reflect her results, absolutely. All right, inside the top 50, look, we've got movement. Zheng, so she's back 7, Kunwen Zheng to 37 in the world. Not too much. That's the primary jump I think I did want to focus on. Yeah, Benchik-Makova, 11 and 12 respectively. They've just traded places, but that's all for the past week. All right, so we will now head on over to Austria, have a look what's happened there before we have a look at the rankings that have been updated, I'll say in the last 24 hours or less. All right, Austria, it is a 500 event, indoor there. And look, it actually is look, it says clay. I tell you what, it looks like it's hard, but it is clay. But something tells me it's hard by looking at the pictures. But no, it is clay. So that's just how the pictures look. That's tricky with the, I think, the court colour surface and how they do mix that up from times now. All right, number 1 seed here is Andreeva. Alexandrova is the 2nd seed. Let's do this. Andreeva with a bye. Look at this. Stevens would have had to come through qualifying here. Sloane Stevens, she's got the win over Maria. 1-6-7-6. That was 7-5-6-4. That's great for Sloane. That will help her ranking. Will be interesting to see. But I don't think we will see Stevens, however, in the top 100 when we do review the ranking shortly. Galfi over Parks, 3-3. So Stay over Kraus, 3-3. Ostapenko with a bye. Iala over Graber, 4-3. Ruse over Bolter. That's a good win for Ruse there. 7-6, 7-6, 7-3 and 2 respectively for those tie breaks. Yastremska has upset Lee, the 7th seed. 7-5, 4-6, 6-3. Korpash over Christian. That's an upset. Christian being the 6th seed. 4-6, 6-1, 6-4. Potapova over Zhang. 4-4. Tager has upset Badosa. 6-4, 7-6, 7-5 for that tiebreak. Sampson over with a bye. Kalinina over Udavari, 5-7, 6-1, 6-love. Vekic over Volnes, 6-3, 3-6, 6-3. Pliskova over Sasnovich, 4-4, and Alexandrova with a bye. All right, round of 16, Andreeva over Stevens, 6-4, 6-2. What I love about that is that first set, how close that first set was for Sloane Stevens. But good win for Andreeva there. Sir Stay over Galfi. Sir Stay is up 5-love. Galfi had to unfortunately retire. Ostapenko over Iala. Good win there. 6-4, 7-5. Ruse over Yastremska. Very good win for Ruse. 4-6, 6-4, 6-4. Potapova over Korpash, 2-1. And Tager's upset Samsonova, 2-6. That was 6-2, 7-6. The tiebreak, though, was 13-11. Wow. Vekic with a walkover over Kalinina. Pliskova has upset Alexandrova, the 2nd seed, 6-1, 6-3. Look, Pliskova, former, I'm going to say Pliskova, I'm pretty sure she won Wimbledon. Otherwise, she's runner-up finalist. But former world number 1. If not, I need to scratch my memory there. If not winning the Grand Slam, I think Pliskova has been to finals at the Grand Slam level on more than one occasion. But that's I know she's regressed in the rankings previous seasons. She's still holding on inside the top 100, but that's still a really good result to see for Pliskova. All right, quarters. Andreeva, good win over Sir Stay, the 5th seed, but she was pushed. 7-6, that was 7-4, 4-6, 6-2. Ruse is upset Ostapenko, 4-6, 6-4, 6-1. Potapova, good win over Tager there, 7-6, and that was 9-7, 6-love. Vekic, good win over Pliskova, 7-5, 6-4. Now that will absolutely help Vekic and her ranking. Semi-finals, only the 1 seed left in Andreeva. So Andreeva over Ruse, 6-4, 6-1. Potapova with the win over Vekic, 4-2. So you remember or recall how I did just share Potapova's ranking almost outside of the top 100. She's now in the final of a WTA 500 event playing top 10 player Andreeva. And we've got the scoreline here to Andreeva, 1-6, 6-4, 6-3. That's really great tennis from Potapova, pushing Andreeva to 3. Well done, Andreeva, collecting a 500 title. I think that could be Andreeva's first title for the season. But that's really good news, especially heading into or now into the clay court swing. I think that's what she wants to see, especially probably not the best results on the hard court swing. I think underperformed to her expectations, but this is, I think, what she wanted to see. That's a really good result. All right, now let's head on over to the rankings. All right, so at 100, we've got back 5 places. Parry at 100. Graber's back 10 to 99. Tager up 20 places inside the top 100 now at 97 in the world. 18 years of age from Austria. All right. We've got Galfi. She's up 10 to 93. Sierra's back 12 to 90. Looking for the big movers of the past week. Zakharova 11-point regression to 76 in the world. 37 places is what we've got here for Vekic. She's now at 67 in the world. So that's the biggest jump we've seen, well, I'll say this season. So a bit of momentum there. Let's see if Vekic can hold on to that, shift more comfortably back inside the top 50. Gabriela Rus, she is now 26 places. She's progressed to 61 in the world. That's a really good jump for her. 28 years of age from Romania. All right, almost inside the top 50 at 54, 43 places she has progressed is Potapova. So that was the key one for the past week. But look, Stadopetseva, she's still steady at 53. So 2 big performers of the past fortnight almost inside the top 50. All right, top 50, not as much movement of the past weeks. Look, Boisson's back 4, hasn't even picked up her racket. She's steady though there at 44. Be really interesting to see how she plays come the French Open, which sounds crazy, but I think it's about a bit over a month away or more. So that'll be really interesting to see after her, I guess, skyrocketing up the rankings after that last season. All right, inside the top 30, we're not seeing much movement. All other players are steady because it was only the one event in the past week. So stays up 3 to 26. Look, Kalinskaya is just back 1 to 23. Ostapenko up 1 to 22. Everyone else is steady. Andreeva and Mboko have traded places to 9 and 10 respectively. Very similar in the rankings. There's a 500-point gap between, say, Mboko and Benchik, who's at 11. And less than 10, well, no, there's about 100, my apologies, between Benchik and Makova there in the rankings. So those two actually are quite close. But other than that, top 10 has remained the same. What we will see, I think, come next week is if Gauff and Swiatek do trade places, with what we've got 15 points separating the two. That'll be, I think, quite interesting to see as far as rankings points are concerned. Without doing a deep dive into what's happening this coming week on tour, I'm just going to have a quick look to see 2025 results and if Gauff and Swiatek are there. Look, Sabalenka's got a lot of points to defend. So does Ostapenko this coming week. Gauff and Swiatek, they both fell respectively in the quarters in the Porsche Grand Prix, which means depending which player progresses, I think, more than the other, will shift between the two. But other than that, I would say the rankings are relatively steady. It doesn't look, Pegula is still 1,000 points behind, so we probably won't see too much shifting there. But look, then again, anything can happen in the space of the week, like we've seen on the ATP Tour, which is a really nice segue after doing the women's rankings to head on over now to the ATP Tour. And look, I've outdone myself again when I say today is going to be a smaller episode. That does not look like it is going to be the case. All right, so that's 3 events on the WTA Tour. We've got 4 to cover off on the ATP Tour now. All right, starting off with Houston, where Shelton is the number 1 seed here and Tiafoe the 2nd seed. All right. Shelton with the bye. We've got Zhang over Pennington Jones 1 and 3. Tarante over Smith 0 and 3. McDonald over Brooksby. That's an upset there. Brooksby the 8th seed 4 and 2. Tian with the bye. Basavarati over Draxel 6-3 2-6 6-4. Barakaga over Walton 2 and 3. Nakashima over Dam 7-6 6-2. Echeverry over Gomez 1-6 6-1 6-4. Bolt. That's a good win win. He qualified. He got the win over Wu, 7-6-6-2. Veljo over Jodar, 1-4. Paul with a bye. Mitchelson over Wong, 4-2. Poprin over Kipson. Good for Poprin to get a first round win. He hasn't had the best of luck so far, I'll say, this season. 4-6, 6-4, 6-3. Hijakata over Kokovic, 4-2, and Tiafo with the bye there. All right, so second round, round of 16, depending how you want to look at it. Shelton with the win over Zhang, but it was tied, 7-6, 7-6. 5-3 respectively for those tie breaks. Tarante over McDonald, 6-2, 6-love. Teen over Basavari, 6-3, 3-6, 6-1. Boutkaga has upset Nakashima, 6-4, 2-6, 6-4. Chevry over Bolt, 6-7, 6-love, 6-3. Paul with a good win over Larger, 3-6, 6-4, 6-4. Poprin, very good win over the 7th seed Mitchelson, 6-love, 4-6, 6-1. That would do a really good confidence boost for Poprin there. TFO over Hajakta, 6-4, 3-6, 6-2. All right, on to the quarterfinals, and we've got Tarante has upset Shelton. That is a huge win there for Tarante. Wow. 6-7, that was 5-7, 6-3, 6-4. Another upset, Baracha has upset Teen, the 3rd seed, 7-5, 6-4. We've got Paul with a win over Chevry, the 6th seed, 4-2, and Tiafo with a win over Poprin, 3-6, 6-4, 7-6, and that was actually 8-6 in that tiebreak. Very good to see, but look, well done to Poprin making the quarters, but well done Tiafo soldiering on through, which means semi-finals, both seeds left in the bottom half of the draw. 2, we've got Argentinians fighting it out for a place in the finals, Tarante and Boutkaga, and Boutkaga has got the win over Tarante, 1-1. Look, as always, I apologise for the mispronunciation. I am confident I have mispronounced that, so I do apologise. All right, so Boutkaga did get through, or has gotten through to the finals, and then Paul got the win over TFO, 7-5, 4-6, 7-6, 9-7 in that tiebreak. Look at this final. Paul got the win over Boutkaga, 6-1, 3-6, 7-5. That has to be Paul's first title in at least, not just this season, I think it's a couple of months since he's regressed outside the top 10. Huge boost there for Paul. I'm interested to see how that has impacted the rankings, but a really good win there. That's really what we want to see. All right, so now on to I will do my best, I'll say to pronounce it, Marrakech. So the Grand Prix there, so in Morocco. All right, so Darderi is the number 1 seed here. 2nd seed we do have is Greek and Sport, to put that into perspective. Now, this is a 250, so even though Houston was a 250, we don't typically see top 10 players playing the 250s these days, but 250 again in Marrakech. All right, so Dadari with a bye to begin with. Bellucci over Benai, 6-3, 3-6, 6-4. Benai over, I will do that again. All right, Bellucci over Benai is a wild card. And again, Benai over House, 6-4, 6-7, 6-2. That has to be siblings there. Both players got a wild card. So Bellucci over R for, I will say, Roger. I'm not too sure if that is. That was 6-3, 3-6, 6-4. And then K, I'll just say for Kai, wild card, over House. Now, I apologise that I am just giving a random name just for pronunciation purposes. 6-4, 6-7, 6-2. That is very, very exciting. So one of the siblings, will say, did get through to the second round. All right, Halfman over De Jong, 7-6. That was 8-6, 6-4. Mute with a bye. Bardi over Vukic. That's actually an upset there. 6-2, 3-6, 6-1. Turagalanti over Roca, 7-6, 6-2. Mazarak over Surundolo, 7-6, 3-6, 6-3. Kopriva, the 6th seed, over Medalovic, 6-7, 7-5, 6-2. Mueller over Cena, 2-3. Jodar over Lachovic, 3-4. Makak with a bye. Bus over Berrettini, good win there, 7-6, 6-7, 6-4. Urgo Carabelli, good win over Skaktov, 6-7, 6-3, 6-4. Van Ash over Gaston, 6-4, 7-6. And Greek and Sport with a bye. All right, round of 16, second round, depending how you want to view it. We've got Darderi with a win over Bellucci, 4-2. Halfman over Benai, I'll say K Benai, 6-4, 6-7, 6-2. Mute over Bardet, Love and 2. Trungaletti upset the 5th seed Mazdalak, 7-6, 6-3. Mueller over Kopriva, 6-3, 7-6. Jodar has upset Macaque. Wow, we've got a 6-4, 4-6, 6-3. Urgo Carabelli's upset the 7th seed Bus, 6-3, 3-6, 7-5. And Van Ash's upset the 2nd seed Greek and Sport, 6-4, 1-6, 6-3. That is a lot of upset for that round of 16, especially for the seeded players. All right, wide open draw, I'd say. Quarterfinals, we've got 2, 3 of a possible 8 seeds remain. All right, so Darderi's got a walkover over the 8th seed Halfman. Trungaletti, a qualifier, has upset the 3rd seed Mute, 4-6-4. I'll say that again. I'm getting a little bit too excited with this. Trungaletti over Mute, 4-6, 6-3, 6-4. Jodar over Mueller, 6-2, 2-0. So it looks like Mueller had to retire in the second there. And Urgo Carabelli over Van Ash, Love 6, 6-3, 6-2. Wow. So Darderi's the only remaining seeded player. And Trungaletti, the qualifier, has upset Darderi in the semi-finals, 6-4, 7-6. Absolute bloodbath as far as seeds are concerned happening here in Morocco. Jodar over Urgo Carabelli, 6-2, 6-1. Oh my goodness. Which means the finals, we've got Jodar and the qualifier, Trungaletti. Wow, Jodar did get the win there, 3-2. That'll be interesting to have a look at the rankings to see, I'll say, the progression of both players respectively. Well done, Jodar. That has to be, I think, his first ATP Tour title. And Trungaletti as a qualifier, that is huge news for the Argentinian. Very cool to see. All right, which brings us now to, I do believe, Bucharest. The Tarak Open here. Now, it is another 250 event. For perspective, Diallo is the number 1 seed and Mannarino is the 2nd seed. All right, we're going to get through Bucharest before we move on to Monte Carlo. So the 1,000, I guess, the big feature of today's episode. All right, Diallo with the bye. Molcan over Analdi, 3-1. Malta over Boitan, 3-5. Navonne over O'Connell, 4-6. Don't normally see a player marked as alternate over lucky loser, etc. So that's interesting. So that was 6-4, 7-6, 10-8 in that tiebreak. Borges with a bye. Zumher over Gianu in 3, 6-3, 4-6, 7-6. Shavenko over Taranku, 2-4. Vanderden Schulp, 8 seed over Mastarelli, 3-2. Altamar, 6 seed over Martinez, 1-4. Prismic over Basavali, 4-2. Skalaradis over Shoinsky, 3-4. Marzan, 3rd seed with a bye. Baez, 5th seed over Gorbas, 3-1. Drogert over Bautista Agut, 6-1, 1-6, 6-1. Merida, the qualifier, over another alternate, Vertainen, 7-6, 5-7, 7-5, and Mannarino there with the bye. All right, second round, round of 16. Wow, Diallo has been upset by Molcan, the qualifier, 6-2, 6-2. Navonne with the win over Mueller, 2-1. Borges has been upset by Zumher, 7-6, 6-4. Vanderzen Schulp, 8 seeds with the win over Shavenko, 5-1. Altamar over Prismic, 3-6, 7-6, 7-6. Marazan, 3rd seed with the win over Sakalaradis, 7-6, 7-5. Joe Gertz upset the 5th seed Baez, 4-4. And Merida has upset the 2nd seed Mannarino, 4-6, 6-2, 6-2. And Merida is a qualifier as well. All right, quarterfinals, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, 50% of seeds do remain at the quarter stage. Navonne over Molcan, 3-6, 6-2, 6-3. Vandersen Schulp, 3-3 over Zumher. Madazan over Altima, 2-6, so 6-2, 7-6. And Merida, the qualifier again, with a win over Droget, 4-6, 7-6, 3-1. Ouch, looks like Droget unfortunately had to retire there almost before the finish line. All right, semi-finals, 3 seeds remain and a qualifier. So we've got Navonne, the 7th seed, with a win over Vandersen Schulp, the 8th seed, 5-7, 7-6, 7-5. And then you got Merida, the qualifier, over Madazan, the 3rd seed, 6-7, 6-3, 6-1. So that is 2 qualifiers in the same week, making the finals of a 250 event, with the seed coming out on top. Navonne, the seeded player, 7th seed, over Merida, 6-2, 4-6, 7-5. But look, well done, Merida, another qualifier, and Navonne for that win, for that title for the season. Very, very good to see. Okay, let's have a look now at the rankings for last week before we then do Monte Carlo and have a look at the rankings that do reflect those results. All right, so Hajaka's up 2 places, back inside the top 100 at 100. Komasana's taken a 12-point hit to 99 in the world. Kogovic has taken a 13-point regression, so he's at now 98 in the world. Then Ash, 15-point progression to 94 in the world. Looking at, again, the big movers. Look, we've got Duckworth up 9 to 86. Look, there's a lot of movement. Zumher's back 7 to 81. Trungaletti, that's the big jump there, and I believe this was the qualifier. 41 places inside the top 176 in the world. 36 years of age from Argentina. Very, very cool to see. Austin Tarante, 11 places up to 72 in the world. Again, cool to see. Baez is back 15 to 65, and Brooksby's back 23 places to 64 in the world. Burakaga, after his result the past week's up 15 places to 62 in the world. Mazarak's back 7 to 60. Same with Fuchsovich, back 7 to 58. And Jodar, with his result the past week, 19 years of age from Spain, 32 places up to 57 in the world. That is a huge leap. Well done there. Vandersen Schulp's up 10 to 52. We've got Navonne, 18-point progression to 42 in the world. That's most of what we're seeing outside the top 30. Inside the top 30, a bit of movement. Look, Paul's up 3 places to 18 in the world, so back inside the top 20. Tiafoe's actually back 2 to 20 in the world. Darderi's back 2 to 21 in the world. Kaboli's back 3, so he's now at 16. A little bit of movement between Rublev, Kaknikov, Lehecka. They're all up 1 place, 15, 14, 13 respectively. Top 10, not much movement inside the top 10 other than Shelton and Fritz have traded places. Shelton up 1, Fritz back 1 to 8 and 9 respectively. All right, which means we get to focus on the past week's rankings after we have a look at Monte Carlo. So buckle in, because I know Monte Carlo, it was a big one. It's a big one. It's the first 1,000 event in a few weeks. WTA Tour, I believe, has had 2 1,000 events. Or no, maybe there was 1 more or 2 500s over the, say, the ATP Tour's multiple 250s. But this is the big one here. All right, Alcar is number 1 seed. Sinner is the 2nd seed. Let's go through this. Alcaraz with a bye. Look, Baez got the win over Wawrinka, 5-5. Look, it's sad to see because we know this is Wawrinka's last season on tour, but still a good performance there, pushing Baez to 5-5. All right, Echevry over Dimitrov. This is rough because I think Dimitrov's around 93 in the world, struggling for that comeback since, I want to say, US Open, that injury there. But look, Echevry 6-4, 2-6, 6-3 over Dimitrov. Adame over Quinn, 1-4. Lehecka over Nava, 7-6, 6-7, 6-2. That was actually the first tiebreak, 7-1. Then it actually was 8-10, then 6-2. Tabilo over Fuchsovich, 4-3. Monfils got a wild card. Good win over Greekenspor there, 6-7, 6-1, 6-4. Bublik with the bye, Mazzetti with the bye. Vachereau, good win over Surundolo, 5-7, 6-2, 6-1. Madazan over Zumher, 2-1. Hercax, good to see he's got a protected ranking now next to his name, even though I think his protected ranking should be higher. But he actually got a good win over Darderi, 15th seed, 7-6, and that was 7-4, 5-7, 6-1. Kaboli over Komisana, 7-5, 2-6, 6-3. Blocks over Shapovalov, that is a very good win for Blocks, 6-4, 4-6, 6-3. We've got Nori over Kekmanovic, 6-2, 4-6, 7-6, and that was 7-love. Diminor with a bye, Medvedev with a bye. Berrettini, got the win over Bautista Agut, 4-love. Unfortunately, looks like Bautista Agut had to retire there. Bautista Agut did get that lucky loser status also. Fonseca, very good win, I'll say, over Diallo. Diallo's ahead of Fonseca, I believe, in the rankings there, but well done. 2 up-and-comers, both respectively on the radar, in particular Diallo this season, 2 and 3. Rindenek has upset the 12th seed Kaknikov, 7-5, 6-2. Rublev, very good win over Borges, even though Borges isn't seeded. He's a tough player, 6-4, 1-6, 6-1. Bergs with a win over Manarino, 4 and 3. You've got Garin with a win over Analdi, 2 and 4. Zverev with a bye, or Olisame with a bye. Silic, good win over Shevchenko, 1 and 3. Mute over Mueller, 4 and 1. Rudd, look at this with the win over Popperin, with how well Popperin, he notched up a few wins, but that's a tough first round draw. 3 and 4 to Rudd. Really curious to see if Rudd can also, let's say, turn back the clock a bit to how he was playing on the clay a few seasons ago. If he can really replicate that this season or not, it'll be interesting to see. Surundolo, 16th seed with a win over Tsitsipas, 7-5, 6-4. Not going to help Tsitsipas and his ranking, I'll say, regression. Let's see when we look back if he's holding on to inside the top 30 or if he's been bumped out. Macaque win over Altamar, 6-4, 1-6, 6-3. Humbert over Kawame, 3 and 5. And then Sinner with the bye. All right, on to the second round of 32. Seeds are now in action. We've got Alcaraz over Baez. Keeping in mind how well these players have been playing in the 250 events as well. So Alcaraz with the win, 1 and 3. Chevrolet over Adame, 3-6, 6-3, 6-2. Laheka over Tabillo, 4-6, 7-6, 6-3. Bublik over Monfils, 4 and 4. Vasher Rose upset Mazzetti, the 4th seed, 7-6, 7-5. That first tiebreak was 8-6. Hercax, good win over Matazan, 2 and 3. Blocks has upset the 10th seed Kaboli, 3 and 3. Dimanor's been pushed by Nori, 7-6, 2-6, 6-2. Berrettini's upset Medvedev, 6-love, 6-love. I know there was a bit of a, let's call it a hissy fit, bit of a tantrum there from Medvedev. I did not watch that. Obviously don't condone that, support that. Really disappointing from Medvedev. Let's hopefully see he picks up his act, but a good win there for Berrettini nonetheless. Fonseca over Rindenek, 7-5, 4-6, 6-3. Bergs has upset Rublev, the 13th seed, 6-4, 6-1. So Revs holding on there over Garin, the qualifier, 4-6, 6-4, 7-5. Ogor Olisame over Silic, 7-6, 6-3. Rudd over Mute, 5 and 3. Macaques upset Surundolo, the 16th seed, 7-6, 6-3. And Sinner with the win over Humbert, 6-3, 6-love. All right, round of 16. That was a lot of seeds falling, but we've still got a number left in play. But we will see some surprise packets, I think, come through the quarters. All right, round of 16. Alcaraz over Echeverry, 6-1, 4-6, 6-3. Well done, Echeverry taking a set off Alcaraz. Bublik over Laheka. That's a tough one. Really shows that Bublik... He's playing some really good tennis on the clay. 6-2, 7-5. Vachereau over Hercax. Look, I want to say Hercax because he's a former top 10 player. Vachereau hasn't gotten to that level yet, but Vachereau absolutely has been tracking the last couple of months. 6-7, 6-3, 6-4. Well done there for Vachereau. Diminor over Blocks. And Blocks is a qualifier. 5 and 6. That tiebreak was 7-4. Fonseca over Berrettini, 3 and 2. Zverev over Bergs, 2 and 5. And how's this? Agur Elisame and Rudd facing off 6th and 9th seed respectively. 7-5, 2-all. Looks like Rudd had to retire in that second. That is very disheartening, considering I think the clay court season is the best chance, I think, for Rudd to make a final, make a semi-final, make a really big run come Paris. But really good win there for Felix. Sinner, good win over Macaque, but Macaque did get a set off. Sinner, 6-1, 6-7, 3-7, 6-3. Look, all credit to Macaque for pushing Sinner there. But again, well done, Sinner, pushing through. All right, quarterfinals, and we do have some surprises here. All right, so Alcaraz over Bublik, 6-3, 6-love. Vachereau getting through to the quarters, unseeded, and he has got a win over de Minaur, 6-4, 3-6, 6-3. That is a big one there for Vachereau. Bit of an ouch there for Alex, but still making it to the quarters is solid. Zverev over Fonseca, but look at this. Fonseca pushed the number 3 in the world to 3 tight sets. 7-5, 6-7, 6-3. That's a good result for Fonseca, but again, well done to Zverev. And I think that's underrated. Number 3 in the world, he's still consistently holding his own, more often than not, at these 1,000 events. Sinner with a good win over Agur Elisame, 3 and 4. Look, semi-finals is what you want to see. You've got 3 of the top 3 players there, plus Vachereau. So Alcaraz over Vachereau, 4 and 4. Look, if Vachereau can push Alcaraz that close, that's a really good metric there. Sinner over Zverev, 6-1, 6-4. Still really good results, I think, for Zverev and Vachereau falling at the semi-stage. I think what's most surprising here is the final. Sinner Alcaraz, number 1 ranking on the line, is that it was straight sets, not 3 straight sets here to Sinner, which is not surprising, actually, if you've tuned into, I'll say, recent episodes. 7-6, 6-3, that tiebreak there was 7-5. Well done, Sinner, reclaiming that number 1 ranking back and also overtaking Alcaraz to 67 to 66 weeks at number 1. I think that's the new fun metric this week that the ATP Tour has shared. But again, not surprising that Sinner's back to number 1 if you've been tuning in to a recent episode. I think what's interesting is that we didn't see Djokovic play in Monte Carlo. So curious to see what we'll see of Djokovic, I guess, in the coming weeks and if he is in action. I'm just going to take a quick peek at Barcelona, only because I want to see if Djokovic is in action. Not seeing him, but I don't want to spoil anything there. And then Munich this week as well. Maybe we may or may not see him. Just doing a quick rundown. And no, he's not. So that's interesting. So he's out. Very curious to see how he's going to play. I'm going to say he's prepping for Paris, and there's probably going to play maybe one warm-up tournament prior, and there is a method to that madness, absolutely. All right, rankings, here we go. Fresh off the block in the last 24 hours, focusing on the top 100. All right, Dan Ash, 6-point regression, so he is at 100 in the world. Mueller, he's back 7 to 95. Bautista Agut's back 8 to 93, but look, still 37 years of age, former top 10 player, still playing some good tennis. Just for perspective, Berrettini's back 1 to 91 in the world. Prismic, he's the biggest climber, I think, this week, or one of, up 19 places to 87 in the world. I think this could be Prismic's first stint inside the top 100, the 20-year-old from Croatia, or maybe he's briefly been there before then regressed. So let's see if Prismic can hold on to that new top 100 ranking now this season. Garin, he look even bigger climber. Former top 20 player, I believe, up 26 places to 83 in the world. Very solid there. Garon's back 7 to 76 in the world. Mazarak has actually taken a bit of a hit, 13-point regression to 73 in the world. Block's 19-point progression to 72 in the world. Duckworth's up 16 to 70 in the world. That's solid. Look at this. This is an ouch. Tsitsipas. Ranked well and truly inside the top 10 12 months ago. 19-point regression, now at 67 in the world. That's tough. And again, only 27 years of age. We shouldn't be seeing this type of dip. That really goes to show some loose strings there in his game. Something does need to give for him to claw his way back. Similar, I guess, to what Sakari happened last season. But she's on her way back, so Tsitsipas absolutely can claw his way back. Look, Hurkacz's 11 points. He's been up to 63 in the world. And look, Hurkacz's still 29 years of age, so he's still able, he's got plenty of time to claw his way back. Baez is up 8 to 57 in the world, but Poprin, he's taken a bit of a hit, 15-point regression to 59 in the world. All right, inside the top 50, Makak's up 6, so back inside the top 50 to 47 in the world. Tabillo's back 6 to 45. A lot of movement, but still just focusing on the big ones. Berge's 7-point progression, so he's up to 40, my apologies, in the world. Fonseca's up 5 to 35. 19-year-old Brazilian, and he has steadily been clawing his way inside of the top 30. I think if you tuned into an episode roughly about 12 months ago, I actually had Fonseca to join the top 30. I gave him, I think, a 12-month period from memory. And this just goes to show how great the data is, the predictive analytics, because he is on his way very close now. And that it was a very good metric, that it's not necessarily a bad thing if you take your time, because higher chances are you will sustain that rather than quickly jump up inside the top 30, then regress soon thereafter. All right, top 30 now. You may or may not be able to hear that in the background. You know that is one of my scallywags trying to make himself comfortable. And there is no hope of me trying to stop him. All right, top 30. Look, Phil's is back 2, so he's at 30 in the world. Drape is back 3 to 28. Even though Rune has not played, he's up 2 to 27 in the world. Dadoch Fekine is actually back 6 to 23. Vachereau's up 6 to 17. That is a new career high for Vachereau. 27-year-old Polish player, but oh my goodness, has he made those inroads the last 6 months. Now it's 17. Very impressive there. No other changes inside the top 17, other than inside the top 10. There has actually been some movement. Look, Mazzetti's back 4 to 9. Then you got Fritz up 1 to 8. Dimenor's back 1 to 7. Shelton is actually up 2 to 6. Felix is up 2 to 5 in the world. Djokovic, he's just steady at 4, not even playing. And Zverev steady at 3. And as I'll say, insinuated earlier, we've seen a switch between Sinner and Alcaraz. Sinner's taken back the number 1 ranking over Alcaraz. But the gap now is very small. I think we've got a gap at 110 points between the two. So I think that's more exciting. Anything is on the line. Each tournament they play, there's a potential switch happening there. I think what's really interesting is, will Felix get closer to Djokovic to fall? There's 600 points separating the two there. When you're looking at Shelton and Felix, there's more of a gap. There's a 200 point there. Dimenor's at 7 and Shelton. So the gap there is actually only 5 points between them. Very, very close. So 5, 6, 7, very, very close. Well, actually, and 8. So all 4 of those players, because Shelton's actually, Fritz, is only 25 points behind Dimenor. So there's really not much in it, but when you're looking at 5, 6, 7, and 8, they're actually all very close. Mazzetti behind Fritz, about 255 points, or 245 points, my apologies, separating the two of them. And Medvedev at 10, 1. Less than that, there's 40, 50, 65 points separating. So, look, those top 5 players, that's very, very close. Look, we have a similar story in a group of the players on the WTA Tour, my apologies, when you're looking at 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 in the world. Now, predominantly, there's a good, healthy range between 6 and 5, but big gap when you're looking at 7, 8, 9 and 10, they're close. So similar on both tours, where you've got the top 4, 5 really in their own, similar to the ATP Tour, top 4 in their own. So that'll be interesting to see, I think, over the coming weeks. That is today's episode. Oh my goodness, we've got Copa, Charleston, Austria on the WTA Tour, ATP Tour, Houston, Macarac, Bucharest, and Monte Carlo for episode 197. Oh my goodness, which means there's 3 away. We will do a quick one next week before we've got 2 1,000 events leading up towards the French Open. But Beyond Top 10 Tennis will come to a close. Oh my goodness, or a pause, we should say. A brief hiatus in the coming weeks. And it's a little bit bittersweet. I almost want to change my mind, but no, it is. Well, I'll say set in jelly. How's that? Set in jello, because I'm sure there will be movement in the coming months and all season. All right, so thank you so much for listening. To grab your copy of any one of my 14 books, you can find them on AIMA International or Amazon, so irrespective where you're based in the world. If any comments or questions, head to AIMA International or Topic Thread, or leave comments directly on YouTube or Spotify. To interact with Beyond Top 10 Tennis, catch up on our blogs, or sign up to my newsletter, head to AIMA International, and remember to check out Pink Octopus Books to Spruik. And look, if you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, like, share, and all of the above. Beyond Top 10 Tennis exists for you, so please consider sharing us with those you know near and far. Look, and if you're serious about heading towards the top 10 or want to know what you're missing to secure that maiden Grand Slam or more, don't be shy, come and say hi. All right, on that note, thank you so much for listening. I am so incredibly grateful. I'm your host, Dr. Ashley Morgan Berge, and this is Beyond Top 10 Tennis, and I'll see you next time.